Scandal helped build Hollywood, but even the boldest tabloids never touched its darkest secrets. Beneath the glamour, the golden age of Tinseltown was a world where survival often meant more than auditions and charm. It meant selling far more than a screen test. The actors your grandparents once adored weren't always just matinee idols. Some were hustlers walking Sunset Boulevard, trading their youth and beauty for rent money or the hope of a break. Behind every sparkling smile and tuxedoed leading man was a hidden economy of whispered deals and desperate choices. These were the untold rules of Hollywood's golden era, and what you're about to discover may forever change how you see its most iconic stars. Rock Hudson. Before he was the granite-jawed dreamboat of Hollywood, Rock Hudson was just Roy Fitzgerald, a broke truck driver from Illinois chasing a dream in Los Angeles. He had the looks, the charm, and the ambition, but none of that paid rent. According to biographers and whispers from Hollywood insiders, Hudson's first roles weren't on studio lots. He found work in the city's shadowy party circuit, where young, desperate men offered companionship to wealthy power players in exchange for a roof over their heads or a crucial introduction. His rise wasn't a stroke of luck. It was carefully managed by Henry Wilson, a notorious agent who specialized in recruiting fresh-faced hopefuls. In Wilson's world, nothing came free. Hudson played the game, walking the thin line between hustling and networking. His legacy reminds us that beneath Hollywood's polished surface lay an unspoken survival economy, one where even the future king of masculinity had to compromise to stay afloat. Scotty Bowers. If Rock Hudson's story hinted at Hollywood's hidden world, Scotty Bowers was the man who blew it wide open. Starting out as a gas station attendant on Hollywood Boulevard in the late 1940s, Bowers quickly became more than just a hustler. He became the ultimate fixer. With charm, connections, and absolute discretion, he built an underground empire that catered to the most discreet and desperate needs of Hollywood's elite. Actors, producers, even studio heads called on Scotty when they wanted companionship without scandal. His small station became a gateway to a secret network where dozens of young, ambitious men traded time and intimacy for survival. Years later, Bowers published a memoir that sent shockwaves through Hollywood history, naming names and confirming rumors long whispered in the shadows. He didn't just participate in the system, he organized it, exposing how deeply the industry relied on hidden deals. Scotty's legacy proves that old Hollywood's golden glow was built on secrets only he dared illuminate. Ramón Novarro, long before Hollywood crowned him its mysterious Latin lover, Ramón Novarro was José Ramón Gil Samaniego, a young man from Mexico chasing the American dream. In the silent film era, his striking looks and brooding presence made him a star, but his path to fame was anything but glamorous. Broke and struggling in a ruthless city, Novarro did what many desperate young actors did. He took private gigs, offering companionship to the wealthy elite who held the keys to Hollywood's gates. These were unspoken arrangements, whispered about but never acknowledged, and for a time they kept him afloat in a world that demanded beauty but rarely offered mercy. His later life, however, ended in tragedy. Novarro was brutally murdered by two young men he had invited into his home, a crime that shocked Hollywood and exposed the dangers of living a double life. His story stands as a cautionary tale. Beneath the velvet tuxedos and adoring fans, stardom came at a devastating cost. George Nader. George Nader may not be as instantly recognizable as Rock Hudson, but his story is cut from the same hidden fabric of old Hollywood. A close friend and confidant of Hudson, Nader was also part of Henry Wilson's infamous stable of fresh-faced young men. In the late 1940s and 1950s, Hollywood was filled with dazzling parties where opportunity and ambition were traded in smoky backrooms. Rumors swirled that before Nader secured a studio contract, he was a regular at these gatherings, exclusive events where good looks were as valuable as talent, and companionship often bought more than a meal ticket. For struggling actors, this wasn't about thrill-seeking, it was survival, pure and simple. Nader played the game, learning quickly that the real auditions often happened after hours. His career eventually blossomed, but it was forever shaped by the unspoken deals and shadow networks that propelled him forward. Later, as Hudson's rumored lover and lifelong ally, Nader carried the weight of those secrets, proving once again that success in Hollywood came with a price few dared to admit. Sal Mineo. Sal Mineo rose to fame as the troubled teen in Rebel Without a Cause, his face plastered on bedroom walls across America. But behind the poster-perfect image was a young man who had fought hard just to survive in Los Angeles. Before his breakout role, Mineo was another broke actor lost in the city's relentless competition, where auditions were scarce and rent was always due. According to Hollywood insiders, he turned to hustling on the hidden circuit, taking private calls and party gigs that offered quick cash and connections. Even after he became a star, the shadows of those early choices followed him. Mineo could never fully escape the secret economy that had once kept him afloat, and whispers about his double life never faded. His tragic murder in 1976, stabbed to death under mysterious circumstances, only deepened the speculation. To fans, he was a symbol of youth and rebellion. To Hollywood insiders, he was also a reminder of the high price young men often paid for survival in a ruthless industry. Montgomery Clift. Montgomery Clift was one of Hollywood's most captivating actors, famous for his brooding intensity and the raw vulnerability he brought to every role. Audiences believed him because he lived it. Behind the camera, Clift carried scars that no makeup could cover. Before his rise to stardom, he was just another young actor struggling to survive in New York and later Los Angeles, a world where good looks often meant more than talent. Rumors have circulated for decades that Clift, desperate to escape poverty and haunted by personal demons, relied on survival-based arrangements to make ends meet. Friends and insiders whispered of late-night visits and discreet deals that blurred the line between necessity and sacrifice. It wasn't about thrill or pleasure, it was about survival in an unforgiving industry. His emotional honesty on screen reflected the battles he fought off-screen, lending a haunting authenticity to his performances. Hollywood romanticized his suffering, but Clift's story reveals the hidden cost of stardom. Choices no one wanted to admit, yet many were forced to make. Anthony Perkins long, before he terrified audiences as Norman Bates in Psycho, Anthony Perkins was just another anonymous hopeful trying to survive the cutthroat world of 1950s Hollywood. With his shy smile and nervous charm, he looked like the perfect boy next door, but behind the image was a young man struggling to pay rent and keep his dreams alive. Perkins moved in the same circles as other desperate actors, hustling when auditions dried up and opportunities seemed out of reach. The underground party scene offered introductions, quick cash, and sometimes the promise of a role, but every favor came with strings attached. For Perkins, the line between romance, opportunity, and survival often blurred, creating secrets he carried even after becoming a household name. His fame never erased the compromises of his early years, and those whispers followed him throughout his career, a reminder that in Hollywood, nobody rose to the top without scars. Tab Hunter. In the 1950s, no star shone brighter than Tab Hunter. With his golden boy looks and all-American grin, he was the heartthrob every fan magazine adored. But behind the glossy photos was a story far grittier than Hollywood ever admitted. Like many of his peers, Hunter arrived in Los Angeles with little more than charm and ambition, and when rent came due, he discovered that sometimes the only thing he had to offer was himself. Guided by Henry Wilson, the same notorious agent who launched Rock Hudson and others, Hunter was introduced to a hidden world of private parties and powerful benefactors where opportunity always came with strings attached. Unlike many, he later spoke openly in his memoir about these early compromises, offering a rare, honest glimpse into Hollywood's shadow economy. Hunter managed to rise above the system with his dignity mostly intact, but his story reminds us that beneath every picture-perfect star was someone who had once fought to survive in the city's darkest corners. Tyrone Power. Tyrone Power had the kind of looks that could sell out theaters, handsome, charismatic, and tailor-made for Hollywood's golden era. On screen, he was the swashbuckling hero, the romantic lead every audience adored. But behind the carefully constructed studio image were whispers of a much different beginning. Long before fame, Power was just another struggling young man in New York, desperate to make a name for himself. Biographers and old Hollywood gossip alike suggest that his survival often depended on private meetings with influential men, arrangements never written down but quietly acknowledged in industry circles. For Power, it wasn't about scandal. It was necessity in a brutal business where beauty was currency and opportunity came at a price. As his career soared, the rumors faded into the background, buried under layers of studio polish and public adoration, yet his legacy remains double-edged, the adored matinee idol on screen and the whispered hustler off it. Tyrone Power's story is a reminder that in Hollywood, every tuxedo hides a past few dared to speak aloud. William Haines. William Haines was once MGM's biggest box office draw, a witty and charming leading man who seemed destined for a lifelong reign as Hollywood royalty. But long before the fame, Haines was no stranger to hustling. As a young man in New York and Los Angeles, he survived by relying on his charm, his good looks, and his ability to turn desperate circumstances into opportunity. Unlike many of his peers, Haines didn't hide his past. He joked openly with friends about the razor-thin line between survival and hustling. He understood Hollywood's unspoken rules. If you were young, broke, and attractive, there was always someone willing to pay for your company. Yet Haines wasn't just a survivor of the system. He defied it. When MGM forced him to choose between his career and his long-term partner, he chose love, walking away from stardom rather than compromise his truth. Reinventing himself, Haines became one of Hollywood's most sought-after interior designers. His story proves that sometimes the boldest hustlers weren't just survivors, but pioneers who rewrote the rules of the game. Van Johnson became MGM's boy next door, the golden-haired, all-American charmer who looked like he'd never broken a rule in his life. On screen, he was wholesome perfection, the kind of man audiences trusted instantly. But Johnson's real story was far less polished. Arriving in Hollywood with no money and no family connections, he faced the same brutal reality as countless other dreamers. Talent wasn't enough to pay the rent. In his early years, Johnson turned to the city's hidden party scene, where wealthy producers and studio insiders were always looking for handsome young company. These late-night gatherings offered more than cocktails. They offered introductions, favors, and sometimes envelopes of cash that kept desperate actors afloat. Johnson wasn't alone. Dozens of hopefuls played by the same unspoken rules. Eventually, the studio machine remade him into the clean-cut poster boy of the 1940s and 50s, erasing all traces of his hustling past. Yet behind every soft-focus close-up was a survivor who had learned early that nothing in Hollywood ever came free. Behind the glittering lights and red carpets, Hollywood's golden age was built on more than talent and charm. These 10 legends remind us that success often came with a hidden price, private deals, whispered arrangements, and sacrifices few would ever dare admit. The glamorous images printed in fan magazines told only half the story. The other half lived in shadows, where survival demanded choices that left scars long after fame arrived. Their stories aren't just gossip. They're a lesson in resilience. These actors reveal the cost of chasing dreams in a world that promised glory but offered little mercy. For today's audiences, the takeaway is clear. Never assume the surface tells the whole truth. Every smile on screen may conceal a battle. Every polished star may carry a past built on survival. Which of these hidden histories surprised you most? Share your thoughts below. And remember, Hollywood's brightest lights often shine over its darkest secrets.